call and joining us here at West Empower. Just give you a little bit of why we do what we do. You know, we're a nonprofit organization, and we, you know, we seen that people were coming out in droves for the presidential election, and they were staying home. We were staying home for our local elections. And so, you know, local elections affect our lives 365 days a year. So we said, why not go out and educate, and we all learn together. So that's how we got here. And thank you so much for joining us here at West Empower.
Well, thank you. That's great, because I think you make an excellent point there. We just had 75% turnout in our presidential election, and our off-year municipal primaries averaged somewhere between 20 and 25.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it speaks for itself in terms of the level of interest and engagement. So anything we can do and to up that, increase those totals is fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I just want to share with everyone that we were, you know, I love your decor. I love your decor, and thank your daughter for allowing you to use her space. So
yes, I'm pinkest background. I win the prize for pinkest background interview.
I love it. I love it. So with that, let's get started. Now, yes, I did say, you know, Andy Szefi, you know, how high and everything, but for people who do not know who you are, can tell us, who are you?
Sure. So like you said, my name's Andy Szefi. I'm one of the, I don't know, 4,000 or 5,000 candidates running for the Court of Common Pleas. You've been so diligent about having everybody on. You know better than most. I've been a resident, lived in Pittsburgh since I was about 11 years old. Moved here when I was about 11. I moved down here to Mount Lebanon, where I live now. I didn't always live here. We moved back here about 10 years ago, but went to Mount Lebanon High School, class of 90. And then I went to college at the University of Richmond. I got a scholarship to go down there. So I ended up going to college down in Richmond, Virginia. And then I came back up here for law school. And I've been back up here ever since. I knew I was going to move back here after college. So I did that right after college, went to the University of Pittsburgh School of Law, got out of there with a mountain of student debt like a lot of people, and went to work at a law firm trying to pay that off. It was called Gehring, Rutter and Beam, which was a wonderful place. And I worked there, a little respite, but I worked there for about 13 years. So I was happy. I was a partner in a law firm doing my thing. I did a lot of municipal work and litigation and real estate work and a lot of the kind of stuff you do, working for a lot of school districts and small boroughs and township governments, having solicitorships to those entities. And in 2011, I got a call from a opposing counsel on a case I was working on saying, do you know Rich Fitzgerald? And I said, nope, don't know him. Not really a political guy. I know he was just elected. I know who he is, but I don't know him. And he said, well, he's, you know, I've worked with him very closely, and he's asked a few of us to recommend a county solicitor. And your name keeps coming up from everybody. So you're going to have lunch with him on Wednesday. And I said, well, that's, you know, that's flattering. That's very nice. I'm very happy. I'm comfortable. It's okay. And he's like, well, listen, you should go have lunch, and you should meet, and you should talk about it. It's an interesting opportunity. I thought he was just desperate to get me off this case that we were on opposite sides of. About that. But so I met with Rich and I had a few meetings with him, and met with my wife, and we had a few meetings about it here too. And made a big career change in early 2012, about February 2012, to become the county solicitor, the chief legal officer for Allegheny County. You know, shift really into public service, because it was a really unique opportunity in a lot of ways to do some interesting things in our community and help. And with, you know, I met with Rich, talked about his vision for some of the things he wanted to do with both the law department and the county, and really make some aggressive changes to a lot of things. And I was on board, and I said, you know what, we're going to do it. I'd been involved in local government a little bit. I did, when I lived over in Regent Square, I did a 4-year stint on Edgewood Borough Council. So I knew, you know, in representing governments, I sort of knew what it was about and was interested, had always been interested, but it was a big leap. It was a big leap into something unknown for me and us. And it's been absolutely fantastic. For 9 years now, I've been the county solicitor, the director of the county law department, like I said, chief legal officer for the county, overseeing 45 lawyers in an office, another 10 staff. I'd never, you know, it's like being general counsel for a company with 6,500 employees and a $2 billion budget, and at the same time running a law firm of 45 lawyers. So,
wow.
Yeah. And it's really, I never know. I go over the 4 Pit Bridge every morning on my way to work, Terry, and I generally, most days I have some sense. I listen to the news and, WESA and stuff in the morning, some sense of what I'm going to do that day, but a lot of days none. And so it's never a dull moment, never a dull moment.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's just a little bit about my background and how I got to where I am professionally. And then if you had asked me 9 years ago when I took this job, was I ever going to run for judge? I would have told you no, it wasn't something I was really interested in. But through 22 years working as a litigator in our courts, the last 9 running the law department, what I really saw was, because we send lawyers to court every day in family, in civil division, in the orphans court. Not many people practice in there. Our office does. Every single day. We don't do criminal. Okay, I've never been a prosecutor. The DAs do that. The PD's office defends. That's not us. We do all the civil, family, civil, and orphans court work for the county, for the 1.2 million residents of the county, and all the departments, the county departments. There's 20 of them. All the 5,000 unionized employees and the 24 collective bargaining agreements, all the litigation we do in state and federal court, employment litigation and civil rights, all the different departments, the parks, the public works, DHS, elections is near and dear to my heart. All the things that we do quietly on most good days, quietly. We're doing our job. You don't hear about us much. Trying to make sure that directors, deputy directors, the county executive, county manager can move their agenda and the things they want to do forward. And we try to guide them, help them, get them to yes, as we say, to get to where they want to go. And if you're reading about me in the paper, I'm probably not doing a very good job. I get in there once in a while, unavoidable, but we try to quietly do our work and grease the skids, so to speak, to make people's lives better here in the county. That's what we do every single day.
Wow.
So that's what we do.
Because thank you so much. Because one of my questions was, how do you affect Allegheny County residents? And like you said, so you're the silent heroes, sort of say, because that's what I wanted to, I have here, 9 years of county solicitor, and exactly what did that consist of? And so I'm glad that you tapped into that and broke that down for us. And so let me ask you, with those skills that you have from the 9 years and then your law firm, how would you take that, or how would you take those skills and apply it to the bench?
Yeah, so in a lot of ways, I got to tell you, so I've had a unique opportunity to see the courts from all angles. I work with the president judge and the administrative judges with our lawyers. Like I said, we send 15 lawyers every day to family court, doing some of the toughest cases you'll see there. These are dependency cases, placements, foster care, termination of parental rights, right? And we're probably the biggest family law practice in the county, out of our office, representing the Department of Children, Youth, and Families division of the Department of Human Services. So you see that day to day, all day, every day. We handle all kinds of cases in the civil division, and that's what I did predominantly when I was in private practice. We also have a group that does mental health commitments through orphans court, 4 or 5 lawyers doing just that in orphans court. So we see every single day, I see ways that we can help the courts work better. That's predominantly what I want to talk about in terms of why become a judge. We have these 9 spots open, like Terri, 200, nearly 200 years of experience is leaving the bench.
Yeah.
You hear people say, well, that's an opportunity. It is an opportunity. It's also a danger. It's both at the same time. We can't take 1 or 2 lawyers like we sometimes get and put them, a lot of times they go to family court. That's where they start and they learn on the job. We're not going to have that luxury, this class of judges. There's going to be 9. You can't take 9 new judges realistically, put everyone in family court and have them learn. There's a lot of great candidates. They all have their specialties, their lanes, so to speak. One thing that I think I bring to this race is I have multiple lanes. I've practiced in family court, civil court, orphans court, federal court, all over the place with elections and land use. What our neighborhoods, land use planning and gentrification issues, what our neighborhoods are going to look like. That's stuff that I've done throughout my whole career. That's stuff that's leaving our bench very soon. And we have to have a bench for our bench, right? To bring some of the next people along who know those issues, elections in particular, so important to us, the fundamental right that we all have. And so what I've seen in the courts as we practice are just some I mean, look, these are fundamental issues to people in our community, the
Yeah.
time they spend there. No one wants to go to court, right?
Right.
You don't
Right.
want to be
Right.
in family court. You don't want to be in criminal court. You don't want to be
Right.
in civil division. So you want to minimize your touches with that court and your time in those courts. And for most people, look, realistically, if you have a civil case, you might have one or two in your life. If you own a business, let's say, you probably be there. It's on something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's going to be limited. You know, it has a certain shelf life and then it's over. If you have a family court case, that case could take 18 years. You could be there on a custody placement matter
Oh, wow.
for a long time, right? As long as that child is a minor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Orphans court, same thing. Once you're in that system for mental health issues, mental health commitments, it's usually not short. And, it has a certain life to it. And so it's so important that the courts take the perspective of what I hear from judges all the time. And I even hear from some candidates, my courtroom, my docket, my schedule. It's not your courtroom, your docket, or your schedule. It's the litigants, the parties' schedule.
Yeah. Yeah.
We really need to bring to the court more sensitivity for the people who are there in their time. We've seen over and over again in family court, for example, like people waiting in the hallway for cattle call hearings. They all get called at 9 o'clock. Judge starts at 11. They're there till 7 p.m. We've dealt with this issue over and over again. And to me, there's just no excuse for it. There's absolutely no excuse just for starting on time, right? That's a bare minimum expectation. That's not too much to ask. And these are families. You might have a working family coming in there. You're working one or two jobs. You're not getting paid to be in court. You're not a salaried employee. You have to take time off, and you might have to pay for childcare. You have to do a lot of things. Get yourself downtown, parking, bus, whatever it is. And boy, we should try to make it as the smallest impact we can on those people's time. We really need to strive for that. The civil division's the same way. I push for what I call the assigned docket. We need our judges to handle cases from when they're filed to when they're done. Because what we see over and over again in our civil division, which is one of the few in the state that have this system, is they bounce from judge to judge to judge to judge to judge. And at each step in the process, a new judge has to learn the facts, learn the law, make decisions on issues. And what it creates is an incentive to punt, right? It'll just go to the next judge. The next judge can handle this motion and the discovery issue, or handle the trial or the motion for summary judgment, whatever it may be. And it's an incredibly inefficient way to do things.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I'm really glad, I'm really glad you brought that up, because that was literally one of my questions is, what do you, your take on how, someone or people, let's say a family, or, someone may be starting out with one judge, and then in the middle get another judge, and then at the end have a whole nother judge. You know what I'm saying? And I'm so glad you brought it up, because I wanted to hear your take on what does that, how can that affect a person or people? Go ahead.
Yeah, number one, it takes more time, right? It just takes more time for a new judge to come in and learn what's going on. And what we do is, instead of putting people where their area of expertise might be and their experience might be, we start everybody in family court. And then almost invariably 2 years, 5 years later, which could still be during the lifespan of a case, they go off to criminal or civil or somewhere else. You got to bring in a new judge on that case. We have judges and we have good candidates running in this race. 9 spots are going to be filled who want to be in family court, who have expertise in family court. We should put that's exactly where they should go. We have judges who have expertise in criminal court. That's where they should go. We have judges who have candidates who have expertise in civil division with some expertise in the areas and the things civil division does. I think that's where they should go. I get that not everybody gets to pick where they want to go. That I recognize, acknowledge that. That's just the way it works. But boy, we should try, shouldn't we? And once they're there, we should. I mean, we're going to have this new class, this huge new class of people who are going to be energized and want to see some reforms. And when I use that word, we hear it thrown around. You better have an explanation and a definition. We need to reform our courts. Okay, what does that mean? What are you going to do day one? Because there's a lot of things, Terry, that don't require some institutional permission structure to do, right? Starting on time. You don't need that's not a reform. That's just what you should be doing. In the civil division now with an assigned docket, that's going to take some structural work with the court to change the way we do it. No one judge can give themselves an assigned docket. that has to be something that's done at the administrative level of the court. But boy, if you got a nice class of people in there who are willing to do it and want to do it, I know the Bar Association sure does. I practiced there my whole life. They want it. I know the litigants, you know, they don't not, this is a little bit of an inside baseball term, right? An assigned docket and make things more efficient. But once they knew what it was and had one judge on their case the whole time, that is what they're going to want, because it's going to be a more efficient resolution, faster resolution of their case. And it just makes sense for everybody. And it's not something that we really need. We don't need any legislative changes. You know, we don't need to go to the legislature and say, we need money for this, or we need some kind of statutory change to do this. We don't. It can just be done at the administrative level here in Allegheny County, like it is in just about every other county in the state. And we should just do it. We don't need to ask anyone's permission to do it. We just do it. And that's what I think the perspective we need for new judges. And what's unique about a class of 9 coming in, you're going to have a critical mass of people that can drive some changes without any permission. Just do it.
Yeah. And I'm so glad, because several things you tapped on that I want to comment on. You know, like you said, reform. You know, a lot of people's talking about reform, and I'm so glad that you also said, you know, what does that mean? You know, because they have to have a plan with that reform, because, you know, even when someone says to me, you know, we need to change criminal justice reform, that umbrella is so huge. You know, what does that mean? My passion is probation reform underneath that criminal justice reform. So I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that's extremely important, not to just throw that word out there. We want to reform. You know, we also need to ask, what do you mean by that? You know, so thank you so much for that. Thank you.
And, we need to put some meat on the bone of that. Criminal probation, like you talk about, you know, one of the most high traffic clients we have at the law department that I deal with every single day is the jail. That is our, other than the Department of Human Services in terms of lawyer time, number 2 is the jail. I know those issues. I know what it means. You know, our jail, we've seen it, and you've heard it from other candidates, I'm sure. There's people sitting in the jail on technical violations, probation violations, whatever it is. The point is this: these are nonviolent offenders who spend more time in jail than the underlying offense could possibly lead to. There is no possible logical explanation that anyone could give you why that is the case. There isn't one.
Exactly.
And if you're looking at a sentence of probation, right, for whatever crime you're accused of, if you're guilty of it or plead to whatever, you shouldn't be in jail for 1 second, because it's not going to be a violent crime. You're not going to be a danger, right? If probation is the sentence. It's probably a probation violation of probation. We give so much. Right? We end up in this sort of just loop of people constantly going back to jail, set up to fail the moment they step in there. And if you impose cash bail, and this is done mostly at the magistrate level, but it needs to be reviewed at the common pleas level. You impose cash bail that someone can't afford, you just sentence them. That's a sentence. They go to jail.
Wow.
They can't pay it. So that's, you know, you may feel better, sleep better at night a little bit. I didn't sentence them. I just imposed bail. They couldn't afford the bail, so that's where they went. No, you sentenced them.
That is a sentence. Yes.
It absolutely just is. There's no 2 ways around it. And we put people in our jails who not only shouldn't be there in the first place based on charges and what the eventual sentence could be, but we've turned jails into a lot of things that jails shouldn't be. It's into, you're talking about, you know, I'm sure you'll touch on issues of addiction and mental health, which are a lot of times 2 sides of the same coin. A stat that I like to tell people, I've been around long enough to know these things in the county. In 1980, this number blows people away, and it should. In 1980, the jail's budget was about $5 million. Okay, that's 41 years ago. So you adjust that number for inflation, you're at about $20 million. This year, the budget will push $100 million. Okay, 5 times what it was, even adjusted for inflation in 1980. So there's a saying in government: show me your budget, I'll show you your priorities. We prioritize incarceration and we deprioritize treatment. The numbers don't lie. That is what we do. The numbers are the numbers. In the 80s, we bulldozed every mental health hospital pretty much in the state. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Mayview is the one we all know off 79 South. We bulldozed it. And ironically, I think Mylan's, a literal drug manufacturer headquarters sits on it, on the same spot. So
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, and then what we did was, and that wasn't even a terrible idea, Terry, because the idea was those monies would go to community health treatment instead.
Mm-hmm.
No sooner did we hit the next budget crisis that money dried up. So what we're left with is just an extreme shortage of beds, hospitals where we could give people treatment, and no redirection of the funding to community health treatment.
Yeah,
You're left with jails. You're left with jails. So we've turned our jails into rehab centers and mental health hospitals, and that's just not what a jail should be.
Yeah.
It's not equipped for that. It's not what it's designed to do, and it shouldn't be. And we really need to think about, as a state, if not a country, probably as a country, but as a state, we need to think about, hey, look, we defunded this. We need to think about making it a priority again, because what we're doing is not working.
Yeah. And you know what, you touched on so many powerful points that I'm hoping that our listeners is hearing exactly what powerful points you have talked about. Bail, you have talked about we tapped into addiction and mental health. We talked to you gave facts on numbers and percentages. These are the things that we have to look at, and we have to understand what is being told to us and what is being done when we are picking and choosing these 9 seats that is ready to affect the lives of us, the people coming behind us, our neighbors, our family. These are extremely important topics and situations that you just spoke on. And I'm hoping that we are hearing exactly, what and who we want on these seats. We need people that I just was talking to a young man about keeping the finger on the pulse in our communities, because, like we always say here at Western Power, these 9 seats is going to affect the person, they're going to affect the people, and they're going to affect the community. So we really have to, I think you touched on it when, you talked about experience is needed. The experience is needed. People that, and thoughtfulness is needed, and a dramatic change. So I want to thank you so much for that. And also, you had stated, I had read somewhere that you had stated that you are looking to do, or we should be looking for common sense changes can go a long way with helping individuals and families find solutions to the issues that brought them in front of the bench. Help us understand what you meant by that.
Yeah. So one thing, and we could start with the 2 divisions, let's face it, that you're going to be focusing on, that people are going to be focusing on most, are criminal and family.
Yeah.
Civil's third, but it's also very important. So like I said, these common sense solutions are the simple ones that I mentioned. And for the most part, it involves efficiencies in the court. For the most part, that's one of the big ones, right?
Yeah.
You shouldn't be there for 1 minute longer than you have to. We've learned a lot of things in this pandemic. What you and I are doing right now, court proceedings can run that way too, where it's feasible. We should do that. We should utilize that technology and not drag people downtown. We need to recognize that the decisions that people in family court make, these are generational impacts on kids, right? That's what family court's about for the most part. Private divorces, custody matters where both sides are represented by lawyers, those work out, those are okay. Those people have the means to pay their way for lawyers and through the system, and they work outside the court a lot through collaborative processes. But the ones where we have decisions that are going to affect these kids' lives, where they're going to school, where they're going to live, those are the ones that need to be administered, I think, much more efficiently. I just think you can't make those families wait out in hallways. That's what I mean by common sense. Starting on time, getting the people in and out of there on a regular schedule when they know what their court hearing is going to be.
Yeah.
That's not hard to do. That doesn't take a tremendous amount of imagination for someone to come up with that solution, does it? It is common sense.
Yeah.
You know, and like we touched on in the criminal division, common sense tells you that no one should be in jail if they're facing charges that are not going to impose jail time. That's the most common sense thing you can imagine. And that has a generational impact. If you go to jail for 2 months, 3 months while you're awaiting a resolution of your case, guess what you don't have when you come out? You're going to lose your job. You're going to fall behind on supporting your family, your rent, all these things. For what? For what?
Exactly.
For no reason whatsoever. You shouldn't have been there for a day. You should, jail. Here's where bail's imposed if you're a danger, if you're a flight risk, or I would say legitimately sometimes if you have a history of blowing off your court cases, you got to go, right?
Okay.
And if you have that history, then okay, I can see you got to have some skin in the game to get you back there. But even then, that is a tough one for me, just because of the downside consequences are so severe.
Yeah.
Consequences of being late or not showing up for a court hearing for a probation violation. Is it important? It is. Does spending 2 months in jail, 3 months in jail outweigh it? It does. So there are limited circumstances under which someone should be in there. And that's what we need to focus on, only putting people in jail under those limited circumstances. And too often we've seen this, tough on crime mentality. We're going to put people in jail. A probation officer shows up and says, here's the metrics, here's the chart. It says, these are your charges. This is your criminal history. This is your, whatever the algorithm spits out. And we say, and the judge just says, like, okay, that's it. $2,000 bill. And there's no chance the person can pay it.
Exactly.
And for what? I keep coming back to for what? And then no one has a good answer for that for most people, a lot of people who are sitting in jail. And there's going to be a place. There's going to be a time and people who, there's always going to be people for whom it's appropriate. Let's face it. There are. But that number is a whole lot smaller than the number of people we see in jail now.
Yeah. And I also, you tapped in on because I think I read somewhere that you had said something like there's a lot of poor people sitting in jail or couldn't make bail or something like that. But I wanna bring two questions, because you had stated, like right now what we're doing in the 21st century, we have found out that we can use Zoom to hold meetings, and so after the pandemic, not saying whatever that will be if it ever goes away, but are you saying that is something that you would think about, during or maybe even evening court if someone working or something like that? Are you saying that those are some things that you may take to the court?
Absolutely. I don't know. I mean, it's just a convenience issue, really. Look, I mean, the number of people who are enabled to use this technology through their phones is not that small. I get that there are people who won't, and you're going to have to accommodate that through probably in-person stuff. Evening stuff, I don't know, Terry. That's going to involve schedules of a lot of people. People work, people have kids, they got homework, they got to get them to bed, they got to feed them, they got to do a lot of things. So is it possible? Sure. But I think at the very least, we have a lot of family court, we have a lot of status conferences. We have a lot of hearings that don't involve the parties, like either the accused or the parents necessarily. Why are we jamming up our courts and our hallways if we don't have to, number one, if they don't have to come down? I think there are situations, especially in family court, where judges want to see and hear from the kids involved. And I think there's a lot to be gained from having them in person. You need to see and hear that child and their genuine circumstance and how they're reacting to it and the people around them. And I think there's just a tremendous amount to be gained from that. That you can't Zoom that in all cases, really. I get that. You're going to need firsthand interaction in person with those children. So it's not going to work in all cases, but boy, we have it, we've done it. Where it makes sense, let's keep doing it. If it doesn't make sense, then you don't do it. That it's not a cure. It's not a cure-all for everything about it. The courts, but boy, it's available to us, and we sure should explore it.
I'm hearing several things of the respect that you have for one, the court system, and for two, the people. You have said on several times since we've been conversating the importance of starting on time. And I can tell you something that makes the people feel respected. It makes the people feel heard. And it's something as small as starting on time has a huge impact. And you also, what I haven't heard a lot is that you have your eye on listening to the children. You know, a lot of times we find ourselves in situations that judges, you know, speak to the adult, and that's it. And you know, that circle of people make the decisions for the youth. And that's huge. That is huge. To make sure that all is heard and all is felt. That is extremely huge. And thank you for that. My next question to you. So we talked about passing cases from judge to judge. I want to talk you now. You talked about, you know, not eliminating bail, and bail is important. You know, in some cases. Can you tell us the cases again? You were saying, you know, violence and people who don't, you know, have a habit of not showing up. And are there any other cases that you think that is important that bail is just not eliminated and taken off of the shelf? That you're saying bail is needed in some cases.
There's some, but I think it's limited, like you said. I think those are the big categories, right? The people who are dangerous, people who are a threat to other people.
Yeah.
I get it that's, you know, you might not have bail at all in those cases. There are people sitting in jail now who you wouldn't find one single person to say that's not where they should be. You know, flight risks, if people need skin in the game, if they're legitimately could skip town and never come back. Okay. I get that.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, habitual no-shows is another one that's, hey, this is not a game. It matters. You do have to come. And so those are some of them, but I think what you touch on there is an important point that we talk about when we talk about judges that I would like to see judges have a little bit more of, and it's kind of dovetails with what we're talking about, is discretion. Like the judges, we elect people for a reason. We elect them for their judgment, for their experience, for their perspective. And we should be able to trust in their judgment and say, well, if they think this is the right either bail determination or non-bail determination, okay, you know, that's why we have them there. And if all we do is look at a chart and say, well, this is what it spat out for what we should do here, then what do we need judges for? I mean, you know, can do that, a book can do that, a piece of paper can do that. You know, I just think we have good people in our courts now. We do. We have some who I take issue with the way they conduct their business of the courts, but we have a lot of good ones, and I trust their judgment. And I think they do the right thing, and I think they strive to do the right thing. So we shouldn't take that away from them. We shouldn't take the ability to make judgments and decisions based on the circumstances that they're seeing in front of them. I think that always has to matter. So when people talking about absolutes of eliminating bail, or we always do things this way, or we always do things that way, I think it can be dangerous. That may sound good. You know, you may like them, you may agree on a certain point or perspective, but that can always 180 on you if those absolutes. And I think we need to give judges, allow them some discretion to use their judgment, listen to the people in front of them, listen to the lawyers and the parties, and make decisions that they determine are in the interest of everybody there based on the facts presented. We lose that a little bit when we talk in terms of all absolutes.
Yeah. And it goes right back to what you were saying earlier, you know, the common sense, you know, and it works on some, and it, you know, everything is not just, this is how it should be done. You know, so, and I'm glad you brought that up. And I also, you know, I wanted to make sure that we are hearing, you know, everything when you're saying our listeners is hearing the importance of you know, making sure that we are choosing people that is looking at the whole of a situation, and not just, well, this is how we always done it. You know what I'm saying? What I'm hearing you say is, you know, how we always done it may not have been working if we look around. The county manager has these little quotes in his office all over the place, actually. And one of them is that this is how we've always done it. The most dangerous words in the English language, right? You just accept inertia, right? Bureaucratic inertia is one of the most dangerous things out there. It's in place for a reason, and some, you know, it works, right? This is the way we've done it. And in most cases it works.
but you can't be so foolish. Consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds, right? I think that was Emerson. Like, you can't just go down one lane and say it applies to all sets of facts. And that's why we have judges. To have that perspective is probably the key word here, Terry. Like, we elect them because they have these experiences in throughout their careers in the law and in different circumstances in these different areas of expertise. We elect them to use it, not take it away from them.
So Andy, let me ask you, like I was saying, at the very beginning, why we do West Power, do these educational community civic series. So if you were if anyone was to, assume or think, these judicial seats, this election is not for me. I don't have to get out and vote in this election here. What would you say to a person that when these 9 seats is open, what would you say to them?
Well, it's politely, I would try to say you're wrong if you don't think this is going to affect you. It is. You're going to have some touch with the court, whether it's you personally, your kids, your neighbors, your friends. And the decisions that are made, even if you don't know them, are going to affect you because they're made in your community. So the decisions that these judges make throughout the course of their time on the bench, whatever time that is, either very directly or indirectly, are going to affect you. They're going to affect, if nothing else, right? We have all these issues that are criminal justice issues, social justice issues, racial justice issues. And even if you're not interested in any of that, these are economic issues. Okay. They're fundamentally, if that's all you're into, if that's your lens, okay, let's talk about that. It's a tremendous waste of money, like jail, the way we incarcerate. The stat is roughly $40,000 a year it takes to put someone in jail. Why are we doing that for a minute if they're not going to be facing jail time at the end of their case anyway? That costs, like I said, jail budget $100 million. That's just pure taxpayer dollars. So, we should just be, from an economic standpoint, if nothing else, and I'm not putting that at the top of the list of considerations, but it's one of them that affects everybody. So if that's your lens and that's your priority, look at it that way and say that affects you, even if you don't know any of the people involved. So you can look at it from any number of angles and realize the way we're doing things needs to change in a lot of ways for a lot of reasons. Pick the one you like. If that's what you're going to vote on, fine. I get it. Everybody has a different priorities and perspectives. And if that's what you use to make your decisions on who you vote for, I get it. That's great. You have that. That's what you should be doing. But there's an angle and there is an answer and there is a reason for every single person to vote, because it is going to be important to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I heard you say, I think we talked about it earlier, but I know we here at West Power always say, you just talked about how it's going to affect the person, the people, the community. And so thank you so much for that. My next question to you is, and you tapped into it a little bit. What should, especially in the Black community, we are used to getting sentenced, because of addiction, because of your being an addict. You being an addict, you go in front of a judge, you go to jail. Mental health, and we also learned that we should add domestic violence to that. So which addiction and mental health, we want to say it mirrors, that comes together, and we also want to add domestic violence into that. Now, what should we be looking for in a judge that that speaks to the community of what does it mean to go in front of a judge and go in front of the bench with an addiction, with mental health issues, and maybe even domestic violence?
Well, I think with regard to the first two, we need to have people on the bench who look at them for what they are, which is essentially health conditions. Addiction is a condition. People say, well, I didn't make them take that drug the first time they took it or get them addicted. Right, you didn't, but they are where they are. They are addicted and they're facing this condition. And just saying and blaming them for the first time they tried it is, okay, great. What does that get us? Where are we there? We are where we are, and we need to treat it like what it is. So that's the first thing that I think it's important for judges to have, that perspective that you can't punish your way out of addiction. I get that no one has access to drugs in jail and prison, but
yeah,
they're not typically there. If they're not there long enough to kick an addiction and they get probation violation and they're out on probation again, if they haven't received the treatment services they needed while they were in there and you don't have them available when they get out, they're going to reoffend. We know this. Stats tell us this. We just did a MacArthur Foundation grant with the county over the last couple of years. And what it teaches us, as soon as you set foot in jail, you are more likely to offend, not less, for the reasons we've talked about, right? You've lost a job and you've had options dwindle. And so that data alone should tell us we have to do things drastically differently and avoid people putting in jail at all costs. Now, what this does necessitate, and I hear some candidates for judge talk about, like they talk like candidates for the legislature, which is okay. Judges aren't going to make new laws. They don't determine budgets. Budgets are priorities, right? So these resources we need for, the average person in a domestic violence situation reports that domestic violence on I think it's either 5th or 6th incident. So for 4 or 5 times, they didn't think they had a better option, right? That's the problem, right? So that better option has to be available. Same thing with mental health and drug addiction cases. You got to have a better option than jail. That does take funding. That does take a societal decision that we have to put our money where the problem is. That does have to take place through our legislature, through local governments, not judges, right? Judges can't create money for these programs. I think our Department of Human Services, Mark Cherner, who I've worked very closely with, and now Aaron Dalton, the head of the Department of Human Services, do a wonderful job of maximizing and leveraging resources across local, state, and federal government. We need to do more of that and encourage that. I think the judges can go a long way toward, they're a branch of government. Let's not forget. Okay. They're not just this out on an island people who deal with problems later. They can be active in that process of saying to our legislative and executive branches, this is what we need. This is what's happening. This is what works. This is what doesn't work. I think here on the local level, our county government does a pretty good job of it. But these things cost money. Let's face it. If you don't allocate funds to solutions, then you don't have solutions. That's just the hard reality of life, is that sometimes you do have to put money where it helps. And that's, I think, what we need to do when we think about not just electing judges, but legislators, governors, and all these things. You really have to look at their priorities and look at what they're willing to do to resolve some of these issues that are just so costly in a human and economic sense.
Wow. Thank you so much. And every answer, I have to say that, and I'm hoping that everyone listening has also heard from you, is you're bringing your experience. You're bringing years, decades of your experience. And like you said at the very beginning, you have seen, what goes on in the courtroom. And so instead of, and I just said this to a young man, instead of sitting on the sideline saying, well, this can change. If this change, this will be good. And if that change, this will be good. What we're hearing is that, you know what's going on in the courtroom, and you decided to, I'm just going to step up to the plate and see, and make the changes that need to be made. So I want to say thank you for that as well. A couple more questions for you. Now, a couple of people, candidates, had said that there's some things that they just can't answer, and we, as running as a candidate. But is there one thing that, besides, starting on time, which is huge, is there one or two things that the community should look for as bold changes from these 9 judicial seats? Or let's just talk about the one seat that you're looking for, one seat. What bold changes should we look for from you?
I would say, the bold change, and it's I wouldn't even define it so much as a change, because the changes what it comes from is, you need to look at the perspective that people are bringing to it. when the people that come into the courtroom, how are they seeing that person? Are they seeing the big picture of circumstances which have led to that person being in court? And do they have the experience, both professional and life, to recognize that? When the old saying, when you're a hammer, the world looks like a nail, right? We can't have hammers. We have to have people who have a broader perspective on the human condition, on the people before them, and realize they grew up in different places than you did. They've had a completely different life experience than you have. And it's easy for you to say, well, don't commit that crime, and don't go to jail, and you won't have to worry about what the conditions of the jail are. Okay, that's just a little short-sighted. That's a lot short-sighted. So I think what you want to see in a candidate, if you're voting for a candidate for judge, is what is their philosophy and approach to the people before them? What is their approach to seeing that their issues are resolved fairly? That involves listening to people. That's how you get to understand what brought them there. People will accept. I see it every day. I work in government for the county executive. There are decisions that I make every day. Someone agrees with it and someone disagrees with it. Everything we do has winners and losers, or at least they perceive themselves as having won or lost. But if they feel, especially in the court context, that they were heard, that it was fair, they'll live with it. They might not like it, but every single court hearing has an outcome that someone's not happy with, every single time. So the important thing there for judges, and I think what people want to see when they elect one, is to say, all right, if I left this person's courtroom where they were presiding, am I at least going to feel like, regardless of what the outcome was, I was treated fairly, I was heard, I was listened to, from a real, just X's and O's legal level and a human level, right? This person really heard what I had to say. I may not have liked the outcome, but I get it.
That's huge.
I think that's what people need to see out of our courtroom. They'll accept outcomes. Again, I don't like them. They might not accept them as they're grumbling on their way out the door, but in the big picture, with some time and reflection, they'll say, okay, and you may need to go about things a different way. But I think changes flow from those perspectives, Terri, I guess is what I would say. It's hard to put your finger on one huge thing with our courts, but if I could sort of put an umbrella over what I think that is, I think it's just respect for the people there, where they come from, why they're there, and what makes sense in terms of outcomes. I guess that sounds like these big general sort of sweeping things that don't mean anything. And you can unpack them on individual sort of policy, cash bail, starting on time, having your hearings run efficiently, having an assigned docket. All of those things are reflections of that perspective that say, I respect your time and why you're here and what you expect out of this court.
And that's huge. That's huge. It really is. And I say that's huge because I'm a lot of people, a lot of us that's something we're not used to. You know what I'm saying? So, which is not good to say, but sometimes our courtroom can be extremely scary. You know what I'm saying, for people. But to know that, when we are choosing people to sit on these benches, that we know that if us, our family, our friends, our neighbors go in front of, these men and women, at least they're being treated with respect and fairness. So, So thank you so much for that. My next question to you is what we like to ask here at West Empower, is so we can get to know something about you that a lot of people don't know. So can you share with us something about you that maybe only your family members know, and maybe some close friends that you are proud of, but you don't brag about it?
Boy, I think, like I touched on earlier, one thing I just want to quickly say it is what I'm proud of a lot about the work I've done as county solicitor is that no one knows much about it. I think we specialize in avoiding mistakes. We put people in positions of HR liaison positions in the law department. We created these positions to avoid lawsuits. I tell people all the time in private practice, the only lawsuit you win is the one you avoid. So we try to avoid them. And we've invested resources up front to avoid problems. So that's a tough metric, isn't it? To say, how many lawsuits did you avoid? Well, I don't know. I don't know what would have happened, but I know there's a lot. So that's, I think, one of the things I'm proud of that not people know are the things that they don't know. That the work we do to try to make your government run efficiently and your tax dollars be wisely spent. And to make things like the jail run better to the extent we can. The jail, it has to be mentioned, the jail doesn't put anyone in jail, right? They have no discretion over who comes, how long they stay, and when they leave. They have to deal with them when they're there. But our criminal justice system is what puts people there. And we've tried to work with our PD's office, Project Reset, my good friend Elliot Housey, when he was the public defender, about ways to clear records and just to minimize our population. Matt Dugan did such a good job with that during the early days of the pandemic and going forward and still. So it's those little things that add up that I think I would sort of stress to people. One thing about myself that not many people know is I mentioned I moved here when I was 11. And before that, I had lived in 8 different states. So I was always the new kid. I was always the new kid up until I got here. New kids make good judges. New kids have to figure things out. New kids have to read people. New kids have to get who you are and what you're about very quickly. It's something that I do as solicitor every day with these 45 lawyers. I don't get the easy questions. I get the tough ones. And I have to separate wheat from chaff, the important facts, the important issues, and get down to the nub and say, this is what the real issue is, and this is how we need to address it going forward. That is something that we ask judges to do every day. That's something that it's a skill that I think I've developed and honed throughout the years, both in my job and in my childhood, right? From always being, hey, I'm Andy, nice to meet you. And so when you meet the new kids and when you see them, know that there's a lot going on there. They've had to, especially if you've been a new kid a lot, develop a certain skill set to take a look at you and the circumstances and the people around them and figure things out really quickly. And it's a good skill for a judge to have.
Wow. And I'm so glad that you told us what the Allegheny County solicitor does, because I'm going to tell you something. When I seen that was your job, I was like, what is that? What does
I always say chief legal officer for the county. People understand that a little more. In Pennsylvania, we use that term solicitor. It's a government lawyer, right? What does that mean? They picture the guys in England with the wigs, and this stuff. I could use a wig. I'm not going to wear one of those. But so, thank you for clarifying. It just means the county's chief lawyer is the from the law department. And I try to do the things with our very dedicated people to improve people's lives and make our government work better for us every day.
Yeah, I'm so glad you told us because I really was like, what is that? Yeah. So let me ask you this, Andy. Why you? What makes you unique for someone to choose you for the bench?
What I think I could do, Terry, why me is, I think with what I talked about, the breadth of experience that I bring to the table, both in my private practice life and especially as the chief legal officer, as a solicitor for the county, now that we know what it is, I think is unique in this race. I've worked in all those divisions. I've practiced in those divisions. I've supervised attorneys in those divisions. I've decided the hard questions in those divisions about the arguments we're going to make and the way we're going to move forward. I bring to the table a specialty in elections, which is just something so critical that people don't think of. We think of it now after the past year that we've been through. We never thought of it before, do we? It really shone a light on that. And we really need people in the court system with the land use and the real estate matters that get handled in the civil division every day, which not many people think about, that have a real effect on you. There's a lot of great candidates running who have a real lane in family law. There's some that have been career prosecutors, magistrates who deal with a broad variety of stuff too. But I think you need to take a broad approach with 9 seats and say, boy, we have a lot of holes to fill here. We can't just focus on criminal justice, as important as it is. We can't just focus on family division, as important as it is. So not only do I bring to the table a breadth of experience, but I could be plugged into any one of those holes. I think I would love to go. Like I said, I've never been a prosecutor. I'd love to be in the criminal division because I think we need to bring a different perspective to the criminal division. I have that perspective. I've gained it from working with the jail every day. I know those issues, but if we keep putting, assistant DAs and stuff in the criminal division, we're always going to be talking about reform, aren't we? In 2 years, we need reform. And so we do need to bring some different perspectives. You do need to do things differently if you want a different outcome. So I would welcome, again, I don't have a breadth of experience or depth of experience being a prosecutor because I've never done it. But I do know the issues presented there. And I'd be, again, happy in any division, obviously. But what I bring to the table is the ability to step into any of them.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And I want to ask you, we're great to wind down, but there may be people that is listening and may have questions that we did not talk about. We may be having, they may want to volunteer. They may want to ask you something that, or go deeper into what, we have talked about. How can someone, or like I said, or volunteer on your campaign?
Yeah.
How can someone get in touch with you?
What a great question. Thank you so much for asking that. We always love the opportunity in these days. We don't get to be in front of people much. So the best two ways, we have our website, Andy4Judge, 4judge.com. There's biographical stuff on there, priorities and volunteer opportunities on there, which we'd welcome. We're on Facebook, Andy Szefi, SZEFI for Judge on Facebook. Same way, you can interact with us there, ask us questions. My email address through the campaign is Andy@Andy4judge.com. I tell people all the time, and I speak in front of small groups outdoors. We did one yesterday. There's not a single question about our legal system or the Court of Common Pleas that I'm not just eager to answer and address, whether it's from serving. I get people all the time ask about jury duty, right? As people's number one. Jury duty. How does that work? And jury of our peers, what are we going to do about all this? And all the way down to elections, land use stuff, litigation, family law, divorces, custody cases, placements, foster care, all those things. I'm happy to sit down and talk to anybody, or at least email or whatever we can do, Zoom, telephone, whatever it takes these days to talk about any of those things. So thank you for asking. Andy4Judge.com is our website, and we certainly welcome anybody's. Certainly, volunteer efforts are great. It's a tough time to run a campaign, I can tell you, and I'm sure other candidates have. Interesting, sort of time we're living in here, but it really is. Volunteers.
This is a time to be running a campaign like this, but it goes into the power of the people. If you can get past this, running a campaign during this time in a pandemic, I think that we can get through anything. So
that's right.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, before we say we wrap it up for this evening, this afternoon, is there anything else that you would like to say?
I would invite people, and just the topic I just touched on briefly, which I love to hit because I get this question a lot on jury duty.
Please. Yeah.
And how important it is for people to do it. That, people, especially now, it's hard. And I get working families and it's hard, and you can defer in these times or get a sort of a delay, postponement. It is such an important thing for people to do. And the number one way you can contribute to that process is, ironically, to register to vote. That's where we get our jurors. It's supplemented by like driver's license lists, but it is just so important that you register to vote for so many reasons that you might even not think about. Jury duty is one of them. In addition to registering to vote. I invite them to make an informed decision about how you're going to vote in this election. To definitely vote, number one, and how you're going to do it. You can do it. We can do vote by mail. You can do in person. Either one is fine, but make a decision, make a plan now, right? We're still in March. Make your plan now on how you're going to do it. If you're going to vote by mail, apply now. Get that application in. Your ballot will be sent to you probably in around mid-April, and fill it out. Look for the candidates. We're number 25 on the list out of the 39, but look for the candidates that you want to vote for. Take the time and do the research, and make your plan on how you're going to vote. If you wake up on May 18th and say, oh, maybe I'll vote, maybe I'm not, you might have 100 other things came up that day. Don't wait until the last minute, especially for mail-in. You have till May 11th to apply, but do everything early if that's the way you're going to go. Go apply for that mail-in ballot today at votespa.com.
Yeah, thank you. Now I know I said we was going to wrap up, but I want to go a little further or ask you on the question that you said you get a lot, and that's about jury duty. So, can a judge step in if they see that people do not get a jury of their peers?
Yeah,
Can
so that's
a
a tough
judge?
one. Yeah, that's a super multi-layered question, right? So we have what are called peremptory challenges where people can strike up to 4, it typically is, for any reason. But that reason can't be pure racial, gender, religious. That's under Batson challenges. It's called an old Supreme Court case. But so the answer is yes. If the judge sees that people are making strikes based on what they perceive to be purely racial, gender, religious, whatever it might be, reasons, yes, then a judge can deny those strikes and say, you better have some other reason other than what I'm seeing and what I think this reason is. It's a tough one. People hear about jury of their peers, and the perception is I get to have a jury that looks just like me, right? Those are my peers, which isn't really the definition. We live in Allegheny County. It's the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas. It's about 13% African American. Statistically speaking, in a 12-person jury, you're going to have like 1.6 jurors who look like you if you're an African American defendant. That's statistically speaking, right? That's if everyone there was registered to vote and that jury pool included a true cross-section. So to maximize participation in jury pools among minorities, you have to do things like register to vote. And you have to be willing to serve as hard as it might be. I get it. People are like, hey, look, I got 2 jobs and 3 kids. I don't get paid for being there. It's another thing we can do as a state and as a country. We have to look at, are we going to pay people? Do we make employers pay people while they're on jury duty? Do we make them pay for at least the first day? Do we as a state want to supplement that and make it easier for people to serve? Because let's face it, one of the big reasons people don't serve on juries or asked to get out is financial. Right. And the lower income communities are going to be therefore even less represented for that exact reason. That's another thing that we need to look at sort of big picture statewide and say how, if it's important to us, then that's where we have to put resources. It's not as easy as just saying, well, if we have an African-American defendant, we better have 8 jurors. That's hard to do. That's hard to do when you look at the jury pool you're looking at. But yes, can a judge step in and say, I don't like what I'm seeing here in terms of these challenges? Absolutely.
Thank you so much for that. And I'm hoping that, our men and women, we also heard that we have to do our part as well. When we are called for jury duty, we must show up. It is, we have to show up, folks. We have to do our part. And that way, when we do our part, it makes the judges do their part as well. So, and if that's all, if you have nothing else that you want to say, Andy, we want to say, ladies and gentlemen, and you have something else you want to say?
No, I just wanted to say thank you because we get to give little 2-3 minute speeches everywhere, all the time. And it's really hard to convey. And it's so great to have someone like yourself who's really genuinely interested in the issues and willing to take the time to let people talk about them.
Thank you.
It's not easy to do in this day and age. And so thank you for your commitment to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. Andy Szefi, running for Court of Common Pleas. He gave you his information. If you have any more questions, if you want to volunteer on his campaign, or if you want to discuss anything that you may have to ask him as well. Andy Szefi, running for Court of Common Pleas. We want to say thank you so much for coming to our Educational Community Civic Series. We hope to come back around and invite you back because, as you know, things change all the time.
Sure, so, I'd love to do that.
Great. So again, thank you so much, and you enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, you too, Terry. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.